Now, seemingly out of the blue a couple days ago on the official Star Wars website, there was an update to Dave Filoni's profile page that listed him as Executive Creative Director, which right away caused a lot of buzz and got a lot of people, myself included, very excited as they thought this meant that he had just gotten a big promotion. So big, in fact, that he'd now be officially in charge of pretty much all story development over at Lucasfilm, that he would now more or less get to make all the calls when it comes to what Star Wars stories get told and how they get told, which I think is what a lot of fans want him to be doing. A lot of fans think he is about the closest thing we may ever again get to George Lucas, thanks not only to his love and passion for Star Wars, but for his understanding of it, which in large part comes from working closely with George Lucas for years on the Clone Wars. Anyway, as soon as I heard this news, as soon as people started to message me about it or tweet at me about it, my very first reaction was, well, it's about time. This is arguably the smartest move Lucasfilm has made in the Disney era, and let's hope he can now bring some peace and healing to the fan base. In other words, I was super excited, and so I immediately went looking for more information. What exactly did this mean? So I went to the official Star Wars webpage for an announcement, figuring there had to be one there. And then I scoured the usual news sources for some sort of story, and I found absolutely nothing other than I did see there was a change on his profile page. And so instead of rushing to make a video to basically just celebrate, I waited for the full story, which we now have. And the answer is that, well, he's actually been an executive creative director at Lucasfilm for a while now, since last summer it turns out. They had just never updated the website. This was cleared up by a Lucasfilm spokesperson after all this just blew up on social media. There were even apparently some Star Wars actors that were congratulating Filoni on his promotion. Anyway, this press release said Dave has been serving as executive producer, executive creative director at Lucasfilm for quite some time now. We simply updated our website. Nothing has changed with his current and future projects. He is busier than ever in the galaxy far away. And to even further clarify here, after a little digging, I learned that Dave Filoni is an executive creative director, not the executive creative director at Lucasfilm, because he's not actually the only one with that role or title. There are two others with it, those being Doug Chiang and John Knoll. Which isn't to say this all isn't really good news, so good that I'm kind of confused as to why we're only learning about it now. I'm surprised there wasn't some sort of announcement out of Lucasfilm to get fans excited about his promotion back when it happened last summer. Though apparently, perhaps Kathleen Kennedy's announcement at the 2020 Disney Investor Day back in December of last year was sort of an announcement about this when she said that he and Jon Favreau were going to be creating all these new shows like the Ahsoka series, Rangers of the New Republic, and so on, and that they would all culminate in some big epic conclusion. I guess we were supposed to infer a larger role with the company for Filoni at that point. And so yes, again, this is still great and cool news if you're a fan of what Dave Filoni's been doing with Star Wars, which many fans of course are, though I do know some people don't like him. It just happened a while ago, and I don't think it's quite as big of a promotion as originally some believed it to be. I don't think he's in charge of all things Star Wars or all story decisions. I just think that going along with that announcement from Kennedy, that he has pretty much full control over what I call the Filoni-verse, which is mainly the live action and animated shows. I think he's the mastermind behind some big, massive story that, as Kennedy said, will culminate in some big climactic finale, a big crossover series, somewhat akin to, though hopefully bigger and better than, the Defenders series on Netflix, where all the individual characters like Daredevil, Luke Cage, and so on, they came together in one series to stop a bigger threat. And I really think in this series and all of them leading up to it that Filoni and Favreau and others are creating, that Thrawn is going to be the overarching villain of the whole thing, and that it'll maybe have some sort of connection to the sequel trilogy. We'll maybe try to add some more context to those movies to enhance it, much like the Clone Wars enhanced the prequels, which again Filoni played a big part in, so maybe they at Disney and Lucasfilm think and hope he can work his magic again. However, the big difference there is the story behind the prequels had been pretty good and sound already. The story itself didn't need fixing as much as it needed elaboration, it needed or benefited from being fleshed out more, whereas the sequels, love them or hate them, you have to admit there are a lot of problems with the whole underlying story, a lot of things that just don't make sense. And so I don't think it's a matter of elaborating with the sequels, it's a matter of getting down in there and fixing them at their very foundation, if that's possible, because no matter what they do, some fans are just never going to like those movies. And speaking of the movies in general, which have arguably and sadly been the weakest part of the Disney era of Star Wars in the opinion of many, well, I don't think this promotion means that Filoni now has any sort of control or say over those. I'm going to guess that all the decisions around them still fall squarely on the shoulders of Kathleen Kennedy, though probably with clearance from further up the chain. I'm sure the big dogs at Disney always have a say in what movies get made. Though I do have to note here that Kathleen Kennedy's contract is up this coming September, basically 4 months from now, and there's always a chance, a pretty good chance I think, considering the steady decline of box office revenue after The Force Awakens, that she'll be gone and we could see further restructuring at Lucasfilm. We could maybe even see Dave Filoni get yet another promotion, probably or almost certainly not to president of Lucasfilm, but maybe he gets some more control or more say over the films in an effort to bring them back to the prominence they once had and deserve, and so that they start making the big dollars again, which, let's be honest, is all Disney really cares about. And though we know very little about it as of yet, other than what it's loosely based on, I'm not sure Rogue Squadron, the next film slated to come out in December of 2023, is going to be a savior for Star Wars films or anything close to it, which isn't to say I don't think it can be good or will be good. It just seems like a really odd choice to me, like they somehow think they can kind of recapture the magic of Rogue One, which, as the first non-Skywalker saga film, was a financial success, by attaching a very similar name to it. However, and mind you, I do think Rogue One was good. I think it's the best Disney Star Wars film, for whatever that's worth to you. But I do think Rogue One benefited a lot from coming out in the wake of The Force Awakens, of all that hype and buzz around not only that film, but around the return of Star Wars in general. Everyone was just so excited to have it back. And most people, including your more casual Star Wars fans or your average moviegoers, and even a lot of your more hardcore fans, especially at the time, they really liked The Force Awakens. A lot of people went to it multiple times, and they were happy to go to another Star Wars movie soon after it, even if it wasn't the sequel, which, of course, a lot of people did think Rogue One was going to be the sequel to The Force Awakens. And so anyway, I have my doubts about Rogue Squadron, which again is not to say I think it's going to be a bad movie or anything, only that I don't know that it's going to be a movie that brings people back to the theater to watch Star Wars there again. It's an odd choice to me, and I think they'd be much better off making something with, to put it bluntly, lightsabers, something with Jedi and Sith and cool battles, because I think that's more what brings in the casual fan or general audience. And yeah, hardcore fans love it too, don't get me wrong. And yes, you might want to point out that The Mandalorian did quite well with the general audience despite not having any of that. Well, not having any of that at first, at least. But I think there's a difference between what people will watch and get into at home over what they're willing to go to the theater to see, especially when you consider the price of one movie ticket is roughly on par with the price of 1 month of a streaming service. But anyway, to wrap this up, my point here is I think the films could benefit greatly from someone like Dave Filoni taking the reins and figuring out what to do with them on the whole, having a solid plan in place behind them, behind what gets made and why, instead of this current idea where we're just going to make random movies, it seems, going to award films to people and hope they eventually come up with a good idea, like again with the Rogue Squadron film, but also with the Taika Waititi film that's in the works that we know almost nothing about, as well as the one from Kevin Feige that we also know next to nothing about. And then there were also the ones promised to Rian Johnson, a whole trilogy, but with those I don't think they'll likely ever get made. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about all this. Are you excited to learn about Dave Filoni's promotion, even if it happened almost a year ago? And what do you think his role with Lucasfilm overall should be? Should he be running the whole show, or at least the story side of things, or not? And how do you think the movies should be handled going forward? Whatever you think about any or all of this, leave a comment below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.